We begin this morning in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with a look back at some of that key testimony that the jury heard in the obsessed ex-boyfriend murder trial. The defendant's daughter taking the stand, testifying against her father, her mother watching along as she detailed her dad's obsessive behavior. Obsessive with her mother, obsessive with her mother's new boyfriend, the victim in this case, the man who was killed, Rosalio Gutierrez Jr. And the daughter detailed for the jury the time that her dad actually brought her along to spy on her mom. At times, she sounded very emotional, and on cross, she got rather frustrated. But perhaps the biggest moment that happened during her time on the stand was a gesture that her dad made to her. Take a look at this.
My previous question allowed the option of that there was no conversation. This one asks what the contents of any conversation was.
It's asking for specific contents.
If I could finish. Somehow I have to be able to get her to the topic. It's not, it's not what did you say next, what did you say next, what did you... That narrative will not allow me to get her to a topic.
How about, do you recall any other conversations?
But the conversations with the defendant would be, I mean, this is, they saw each other all the time. There'd be conversations about everything.
There you saw the defendant appear to make a motion, putting his hands up to his mouth. What was that about? Was that a signal to his daughter to keep quiet? What did you think? Tweet us, let us know. I want to bring in now a special guest on the program. She's somebody that works very hard behind the scenes at Court TV, day in and day out. She is one of our field producers. Adrienne Luis is standing by for us in Wisconsin. Adrienne, good morning to you. Always great to talk to you, my friend. Let's start with that gesture, if we can, please, because you are physically in the courtroom for these trials that we cover. You travel all over the country, and you've been in this one every single day, watching everything. What can you tell us about what the defendant did there in that grabbing of his lips?
Sure, Julie. So throughout the trial, the defendant has had a muted reaction towards the testimony up until his daughter took the stand. At times, he looked very happy to see her, and she, being raised by him, looked very familiar with him. And I imagine it was a difficult testimony for her, and throughout that testimony, she had to go into so much detail about all of the traumatic experiences that she had with not just this incident, but others. And, there were times, there were very lighthearted times, but then also very difficult moments for her. And it appeared that when the defendant made that gesture towards his lips, it could have been where he was trying to calm her down during one of her more animated moments, or possibly if it was a moment when she was revealing a little bit more about their past relationship, that he could have been preventing her from incriminating too much about himself.
Sure. Adrienne, you touched on this a bit, and I wanted to expand upon it with you, please, if I could. The daughter up there for quite some time yesterday, as you know, and it was like a roller coaster, really, as you said, times where it was a little bit lighthearted, times incredibly serious, times where she got emotional. Kind of walk us through that, and especially those really emotional moments. What did you pick up on where those came from, please?
Well, she testified to her previous relationship where she was controlled by him. Those are words, that's the word that she used, and that's how she responded to different moments leading up to the incident where she found out that her mother's boyfriend, Rosalio Gutierrez, disappeared. And she took her time throughout this testimony, very careful. She was very careful about what she said. But when she was on cross, I could visibly see that she was frustrated and at times defensive. But overall, it seemed like she was very eager to tell her side of what she experienced, and to really paint a picture of what happened, what led up to Rosalio's disappearance.
I appreciate that, Adrienne. And we have a clip that really touches on what you've just shared with us. Let's roll that now, and we'll talk more on the other side.
She told you that she thought it was your dad?
No. 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 I knew.
Well, I'm saying, what did she say? I'm not asking what
I already
you
knew
thought.
everything that my mom knew. She wasn't telling me anything that I didn't know already.
Okay. And do you remember telling her that you actually weren't there?
I do remember telling her that. I did.
And that you just knew what had happened because of a video you watched and from what your dad told you?
Yes. In the beginning of all of this, I did not come out.
I didn't have a question.
I was finishing your question. I saw him sitting on the couch with my mother coming out of the bathroom. And wow. I didn't think that it was gonna be this hard. They were listening to music and laying there together.
You really can just feel the emotion just listening to her voice, and you were able to see it firsthand, Adrian. How was she looking to you in those two moments? You know, we showed the moment on cross, and then, of course, that moment, you know, talking about seeing her mom with her dad on that escapade, or her mom with mom's new boyfriend on the escapade her dad took her on that night.
In that particular moment, Julie, I could tell that she was very patient with herself. She took a moment to gather her emotions, pause. You could see that the tears were welling up in her eyes, but, you know, she was really resisting that. You know, she's so close to the jury, so I can imagine they could sympathize with her, how difficult it was for her to testify to that exact moment. I saw her in that moment peer up at the ceiling, blink rapidly, and then before she, you know, carefully chose her words to say, you know, that that's when she saw Gutierrez in her mother's apartment and her mother walking out of the bathroom. And what's very interesting about this is that she also said that she had spoken to numerous people, law enforcement officers, and even the DA multiple times about this. And it was very telling that it was still so emotional despite having to, I guess, review it again and again before this moment.
Oh, sure. Sure. We were talking earlier, Adrian, with a therapist about how it must have been so traumatic for her to do what she did yesterday, and the trauma that she went through, you know, previously being brought along for these incidents allegedly, and just going through all that. Your heart breaks for her. I'm curious, have you noticed any victims advocates? I know you see them in and around courthouses for the various trials that you're covering. Have you seen any with this minor child at any point?
There is a victims coordinator, and throughout the trial, so the minor has not been in court up until yesterday. And yesterday, the victims coordinator was at her side at all times. I saw that it appeared that they had a pretty good relationship. I'm sure they had been working together for some time prior to the minor testifying. And it appeared that the victim coordinator was able to have the minor relax a little bit before her testimony. I did notice that the minor did not spend too much time sitting next to her mother, but behind her in the benches in the gallery. So that was something that I guess was coordinated so as not to affect the minor's testimony.
That's very smart. Have her sit in a neutral place. I appreciate you pointing that out, Adrian. I wanted to ask you too about the mom. We know there were some issues that came up where Sadie Beecham, you know, the minor's mother, was accused of communicating to her daughter using sign language. What was that about, please?
It appears that this was something that Anderson's family, who was also in the gallery, had brought up with Anderson's attorneys, and they had said that Sadie Beecham had experience or was fluent in American Sign Language. And so they called her to the stand to investigate this. And what Sadie said is that, she is pretty fluent and that she had taught her daughter a few words, but her daughter was not necessarily as fluent as her. But the key is when she was on the stand that when she signs, she generally signs on the lower part of her torso, and which is beneath the backrest of the benches of the gallery. And you can see in that video clip that was just shown that she had her hands up high. And in that testimony, she was indicating that if she were to sign to her daughter, that everyone would see what she was signing. And so she was basically indicating that she did not try to communicate to her daughter to calm down in any way.
Gotcha. Okay. No, understood. Appreciate it. Adrian, tell me, when the daughter was on the witness stand, I'm curious, did you sense that there was connection with the jury? Essentially, like, was she turning her body toward the jury at all, or looking at them, and did you see any of them, really fixated on her? I'm curious. I know you're always watching, all angles of the trial and looking at the jurors. What did you kind of sense in terms of whether there was a connection there?
For the most part, I think she tried to keep her eye on whoever was asking her the questions. She seemed very focused on the questions themselves and very careful to not say anything that she wasn't supposed to. When I was observing the jury, I could see that they were very attuned to her testimony. They're very aware that she's key to the state's case. Some of the women who I've noticed are very diligent in taking notes. The men, however, seem to just absorb the testimony by watching the witness on the stand. But throughout the testimony yesterday, I could see the jury was, peering back and forth between the minor, the defendant, and the two families that are in the gallery.
This is all such great information. Adrian Luis, Court TV field producer, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Appreciate all your hard work in the courtroom. We will let you head on over to the courtroom as testimony is going to be picking up 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Adrian.